All right, now it is time to go back to our box. On my end here, as I've been making the videos, I've had this assembly sitting with the tape and cement for probably 5 hours now. So that's good for what we're going to do. What I want to do next is I'm going to leave the rails taped together, but I am going to take from the front of the machine I'm going to remove the sliding lid like that. Just take that out, put it somewhere safe, and then pull the rails out by lifting the rear and letting them just pop out of the front. This part has probably the wettest cement. It's not very wet at all, actually. It just hasn't had overnight yet, so it's holding together nicely. It's not super strong. I don't want to do anything too stressful with it, but it's okay to handle. What I want to do is get us ready to put our reward basket here onto the front of the machine. So one thing I know is that we've definitely been taped up enough, so I'm going to remove all of this strapping tape from the outside of the box. Now there's a couple things we want to do to the box before we get to putting the basket onto the front. So one of those things is I want to run a bead of cement around on the bottom here. Now you might remember when we cemented the inside edge of the box to the base, we had to skip the front edge, and that's because we have a pretty low tolerance at the front. And the reason we have a pretty low tolerance at the front, and we don't want any cement to build up inside this lip here, is because that's where our nifty little coin box lives. And so we want to be able to get that in and out with no trouble. So for that reason, we don't want any material building up in the front. So we do, though, we want a nice bond between those surfaces. So we're just going to do it on the bottom. And we're going to do it on the bottom of the whole thing. And we're going to cement this whole bottom in one shot and then let it sit for about 10 minutes before we flip it over. So get ready to take yourself a break pretty soon here. So I am going to make sure that this applicator tip is on pretty well because when you are doing, and as you might have seen earlier, I actually made this mistake. When you're applying some lateral pressure to this and going around, you could end up making the applicator tip pop off, and then you'll definitely apply way more cement than you meant to. So with a firmly applied applicator, I'm going to chase all 4 edges of the box and reinforce this connection reinforce this joint, I should say, between the side panels and the base panel. It's okay to use a pretty decent amount of cement here. Not a tremendous amount, but the bead should have the bead of cement should have a rounded profile appearance. And I'm not worried about us knocking these joints loose anymore. They're cemented in enough places that we don't have to worry about that. So the point of letting it sit for a while before we do any more work is just to let the cement gel up so that it doesn't run anymore. But we're just reinforcing joints that are already cemented at this point. So we're just adding some bonus strength. So we're not really at any risk of pulling anything apart. We're just at risk of dripping cement onto our work surface or parts that we weren't ready or didn't want to have any cement on. So now that I chased those four sides, we'll just let the box sit upside down like this for about 10 minutes. The main thing we're looking for is just for the cement to lose its sheen. Alright, and we're back after about 10 minutes. So now I'm going to flip my box over with the front facing me, front edge facing me. Now we're going to put in a couple of things that we don't want to slow us down later. Is this little rail here that helps hold the electronic sled in place, and this little hook which also helps hold the electronic sled in place. So the assembly here is dead simple. What we're going to do is put this rail into these two slots at the rear of the machine, and this hook we're going to cement into place right here into this little slot at the side of the machine, and that is with the hook pointing toward the rear. So just like this. And I'm just going to show you, here's our little electronic sled, and later that's just going to slot right into there, and it will stay in place because of the hook and the rail. And that'll help, it'll keep our electronics in the back corner out of the way, and we'll be able to pull this card out with everything on it and have access to the electronics. But that's for later. For now, let's just get these parts installed. So we don't have tremendous strength requirements here necessarily, but I'm going to just put cement here, here, and here on the rail and stuff it in there. And then I'm just going to go around this tab on the hook and stuff the hook in there. First up is the rail. And it's easier to hold these where the tabs are. It's just wider there. And actually, I'll do this with my other hand so it'll be on camera. But just put the tabs into the slots. Give it a little squish into place. And that's it for the rail. The hook isn't much harder. So the hook is easier. I'm just going to do a swirl of cement around the tab. Slot that into place with the hook facing the rear of the machine, right here. I'm going to press that inward. It's probably a little bit wobbly. It's also probably possible that you'll have a little difficulty getting it perfectly upright, but that isn't important. There's a little bit of extra space in these parts to account for that. And then I'm just going to put a little bit more cement on this joint here. And that is that for those two components. I like a little more cement on the hook because the hook sticks out. And so it might be nice if it's just has that little bit of additional reinforcement. This rail thing is so flush to the machine that it's really not possible to knock that in any way that's going to challenge the joint that we just cemented. So this cement needs a little bit of time, not long, just maybe 10 minutes like last time, to cure up. But that way it's already in place and it can dry at the same time as what we're doing next, which is the basket. So we'll just talk about the basket a little bit while I have those parts drying. So the basket fits right here on the front, just like that. And you'll notice that we have some tabs up top on the two sides of the basket, but we also have a tab at the bottom here. Also, these tabs are longer than 3 millimeters. They're twice as long as this acrylic is thick, which means that once we get this in place and tacked in with cement and dried, we're going to go inside the box and add additional cement to those tabs that are sticking out inside the machine. See there, inside the box. And the reason for that is that we just want as much strength for this part as we can get, because we have noticed that lots of crows like to stand on the front of this basket once the basket opens, to be as close as possible to the food. That puts extra weight and strain on the basket, so we're going to cement it into place in as many ways as we can. Now, to properly install the basket, you'll also need to get these two parts. We call these the shoulders, and I'll show you how one of these works. When we put the basket in, the shoulders go right there, and another one will go right here. And that's part of the strategy for how a coin makes it down inside the machine. When the coin gets knocked off the sliding lid, and I can even show you how the sliding lid will look when it's closed. When the sliding lid is here and a bird pushes a coin, the shoulder is just a way to help it find its way into the coin slot. The coin slots won't actually be formed until a later step, when we attach those cheeks to the outside of the basket, along with our baffles. Our baffles are going to live in this space here between the two cheeks. So after we cement this part, we're going to go into another one of those periods where we'd really like to see the machine sit overnight before we mess with it anymore. We're going to be using a lot of cement, and we're working on a part that's pretty critical for strength. So we want to make sure that we don't knock anything out of alignment while the cement is still curing up. Also, we need to have our rails installed again in order to make sure everything is holding its correct shape. So I'm going to put the rails in again in the usual way. And the usual way is to take these short tabs on the front of the rails and hook them into these slots in the front of the machine, and then let the rear just sort of rotate into place. And then again, we want to look at the front of the machine here, and these slots directly above my thumbs, which are directly below these angled slots, you want to see the tabs from the rails filling that slot, which we do. And if you look at it from this side, you can also see that our rails are both flush to the front of the machine. And that's going to just make this nice and rigid, because we are going to put the basket onto the front of the machine here. We're going to cement this, and then to dry it, we are actually going to leave it upright like this. So we're just going to let gravity kind of hold things in place for us. I think my little hook here has had about as much time as it is going to need to be tacked into place and not at risk. So I think we're okay to proceed. I'll give you the widest possible view. It'll give you the widest possible view of the mess around my work area here too, which I was hoping to keep hidden, but secret's out. So with my rails installed, what I want to do to get the basket into place is I'm going to put a little bit of cement around these slots here. I'm doing this dry first just to kind of show, and get the shoulders in there. Then we'll run a bead of cement around all of these points here below the tabs and in between the tabs of the basket, and lower it into place. And I might actually work from this side so that it's a little bit easier to see. And so we may need to press just a little bit on the cheeks to push them outward to get them into place. We shouldn't have too much trouble getting all those parts in there. And then what we can do is we can reach inside the basket and apply a long bead of cement there and a long bead of cement here to help with that bond. Something important as we proceed is we're not going to be putting any cement on the outside of this, because this outside edge is actually the inside of something else. We just haven't built it yet. So all the work we do to reinforce this joint is going to take place inside the basket itself and at the underside of the basket here. We're going to run a bead of cement along here, there, and there. So let us get started. So the one thing I want to do before I open my cement is have a handful of applicator tips ready, because I don't want to stop once I start. There we go. All right, let's get going. So the shoulders, these parts here, they are not actually structurally super important to anything. So we're going to use some cement to keep them in their place and to keep them from rattling when they get touched by a crow, but it's not necessary to make sure they get cemented a whole bunch. So I'm going to put a dot on either side of there, and either side of here, where I'm going to put a shoulder on each side. And that's just a little dot of cement to tack those. So drop that in there. Squish the cement around a little bit. Here, squish that cement around a little bit. And then try to convince these to stand up. And the cement actually provides a significant amount of help with that, even at this early stage before it's had any time to set up. And then the cement for the basket. I'm going to use a nice blob. All the way down to there. And also along here. Along this edge. Then a little dot top of each shoulder. Now we'll work everything into place, starting with this large tab at the bottom. Get that into its slot there. Then just rotate it towards myself, and then move the shoulders till they find their way into their tabs. Now, because the rails are installed, it's safe for me to put a little bit of pressure down on this, so I'm just going to place a little bit of pressure just to help the plastic mate up. Now, when it comes to over here, down here, this is a slot the coins are going to pass through later. So if my cement has squished into that slot, I'll just take a spare piece of acrylic from the kit and just plow it out of the way, because I don't want to have a little nub of dried cement there that a coin could smack into on its way into the coin slot. And I have a little bit of a squish here. It's right there, and I'm just going to plow that away with that spare piece of acrylic. And now I'm going to go ahead and put my reinforcing bead on, and I want a good one. So I'm going to make a nice sausage of cement here. And even this little part that sticks down, and then around the other side, I have to somewhat awkwardly reach in. I can't really film this, but I don't think so. Well, maybe I can. If I just tilt things a little farther than I wanted to. It's putting a nice bead along that whole edge between the front of the machine and the basket. I'm also going to climb this vertical part here. Nice sausage bead. And then inside against this right side wall. Nothing's stopping us from putting a bead along the inside of that shoulder as well, if you wish. Okay, give this another squish. So the shoulders I want to tap down a little bit. Another thing we want to do while we have the box up in this position here is put some cement on to reinforce the front panel. And so we're just going to lay a bead of cement along this ridge here, and then that same ridge on the other side of the front face here. Since we already have it, the machine laying on its back with the basket up so that the basket itself can dry. So this is just another chance for us to get some cement on that won't kick off a waiting period, so we can just get this done now. So I'm just going to run this along here. And I actually find it a little bit easier if I tilt it. And we want to use a good bead here. There we go. And then just going to turn it and do the other side. Again, just tipping it just a little bit is a help. There. And that's, I think, everything for this step right now. Just want to let this dry up for a while. I like overnight. When we come back, we will put some reinforcing cement on all these tabs that have extended a few millimeters into the machine. But I want to have us leave this on its back like this with the basket up, as I said, so that gravity will just kind of hold things where we like them, and let those thick beads of cement cure up and give this part the strength that we need it to have.